Hello and welcome to this presentation, Understanding and Preparing for Endpoint Assessment. The information contained within this presentation is accurate at the time of recording, which is the 10th of July 2020. Any information updates to the endpoint assessment process we will share with you via our social media platform, our employer newsletters, and also within the training school. During this presentation, we will discover the purpose of endpoint assessment, the assessment methods, areas assessed, occupational standards, assessment criteria, and finally, model selection and sequencing. The endpoint assessment, also known as the EPA, is a practical-based assessment and is assessed on holistic grading criteria. The assessment is designed to assess the skills, knowledge, and behaviours of the apprentice. The apprentice will demonstrate that they can complete a range of services on a number of clients to industry standards and within commercial timings. The apprentice's consultation skills, communication skills, safe working practices, professionalism, values and behaviours will be assessed by practical observation and oral questioning. This process is very similar to the process adopted by Michael John, as we utilise the endpoint assessment criteria within our own training and assessment work each training day. This helps our learners prepare for the endpoint assessment, but it also ensures that we maintain high standards of practical training and assessment. The assessment methods that will be used on the day of the endpoint assessment is firstly observation of practical assessment. The endpoint assessor will formally observe your practices during the assessment time. So this is when you would be working with your models, your clients, making sure that you achieve the assessment criteria to the standard that is required. And also oral questioning. Upon completion of the practical assessment, the endpoint assessor will ask oral questions to confirm your knowledge and understanding of the task that you have performed during the assessment. So there may be specific aspects of your assessments that they may want to ask additional questions on, just to make sure that you can confirm your knowledge and understanding in that particular area. They may ask you about a certain technique that you've performed, or they may ask you a question relating to colour, cutting, or another aspect of the hairdressing level 2 qualification. You'll see on the screen now, on this slide, we have the areas that are assessed, and they're all encompassing of a professional hairdressing service that you would see within any salon. And they start with professionalism and values, behaviour and communication, safe working practices, consultation, shampoo, condition and treat the hair and scalp, colour and lighten the hair using a range of techniques, cut hair using a range of techniques to create a variety of looks, style and finish using a range of techniques to create a range of looks. Some of these are specific to the units we teach here at the Academy, and some of them are specific to all aspects of being a hairdressing professional. I'm going to take you through some of the individual assessment criteria for each area. We can see here we're starting with consultation. So the apprenticeship assessor will observe consultations on all services completed during the endpoint assessment. The apprentice must show that they have used all means of identifying clients' wishes, adapted their advice to take into account the factors limiting or affecting services, have identified or can describe any problems, have taken into account all hair characteristics, and finally given advice and recommendations. So very similar to the services you perform within the training school and ones that you perform within your salon. It's a very similar environment that you will be used to. The only difference being is that the person who will be assessing you on the day is independent and sent from our awarding body, which is VTCT. So you won't have met this person before. Shampoo, condition and treat the hair and scalp. So the apprenticeship assessor will observe a shampoo and condition on at least one service during the endpoint assessment. The apprentice must show that they have adapted their shampooing techniques, used shampoo massage techniques, used a conditioning product, used conditioning massage techniques, and finally given advice and recommendations. So very similar to multiple services we carry out within the salon environment each and every day. with specific reference to giving that advice and recommendations to show that you have progressed from the standard of an assistant and now you're able to understand hair and scalp needs and conditions and can advise accordingly. We now move on to colour and lighten hair using a range of techniques. The apprenticeship assessor will observe colour and lightening techniques. The colour and lightening techniques must cover woven highlights to include a minimum of a T-section of the hair, which includes a change in depth and tone, plus one other colouring technique. The apprentices must show that they have used a minimum of 2 types of products, carried out all tests, taken into account all influencing factors, and given advice and recommendations. We can already see a common theme running through this, and that's particular reference to giving advice and recommendations. And this is where your professionalism and your values and your behaviours and communications can be clearly observed through the way that you interact and communicate with the client and advise them during the service. Let's pay particular reference to the woven highlight section, a minimum of T-section, and plus another colouring technique. Commonly used may be the application of a toner once the hair has been lightened, or also the use of a root application or classic tint application in between, say, foil highlights. Again, dependent on your model selection, it will depend on which techniques you choose to use in order to meet the assessment criteria. We move on to cut hair using a range of techniques to create a variety of looks. The apprenticeship assessor will observe a minimum of 1 creative restyle. The apprentice must use a minimum of 3 techniques from the range, which can include club cutting, freehand, scissor over comb, texturizing, may also include razoring, precision cutting techniques, including disconnection, fringe cutting, and clipper work. The apprentice must show that they have given advice and recommendations, a common theme appearing once again. You can see here, particularly in terms of referencing to the cutting side, we have lots of options here. And if you take time to watch some of the live sessions we've uploaded onto our Instagram, we cover some of these techniques. Well, we cover all of these techniques within the training that you receive here at the Academy, also within your salon, and also on our social media courses and platforms. You've got a real opportunity here to aim for that distinction standard in terms of your gradings with the application of disconnection, precision cutting, and also texturizing techniques. We move on to style and finish hair using a range of techniques to create a variety of looks. So the apprenticeship assessor will observe a minimum of 1 blow dry, which must create volume, movement, and curl, and also a hair up style. 80% of the hair should be taken up. The apprentice must also show that they have used a minimum of 4 techniques, used a minimum of 2 products, used a minimum of 1 setting technique, taken into account all influencing factors, used a minimum of 3 dressing techniques in effect, styled above and below shoulder length hair, used a minimum of 2 tools and equipment, and finally, of course, given advice and recommendations. You'll see specifically here that it makes reference to hair that is styled above and below shoulder. Taking into account the minimum must be 2 models. If you choose to use only 2 models during the endpoint assessment, you must ensure that one has hair clearly above the shoulder so that you can demonstrate your styling techniques here on that model, and one must be below shoulder. One of the blow dries, again creating movement, volume and curl, typically tends to also use a setting technique, pin curling for example, and the 80% hair up, again aiming for that distinction grade, you will want to add in accessories plus the addition of added hair. But again, this is as part of your planning for your endpoint assessment through your sequence and also your model selection. So we come on to model selection actually. The key to a good selection of models is to know and understand the criteria you are assessed against thoroughly. A minimum of 2 models. Assess each model for suitability to the desired technique you wish to demonstrate. You need to ask yourself, is this service achievable? And will I be able to achieve these results to a high standard within the time frame and sequence? At least one of the models must have hair clearly above shoulder for the style and finish element of the assessment. So, particular reference here to suitability. Looking at suitability factors, in particular pay reference to condition of the hair and the scalp when selecting your models for assessment purposes, and also particular making sure that your second model or potentially third model or one of your models at least has hair clearly above shoulder. Sequencing. The term sequencing relates to the order in which the models will be planned. You will have a run-through, almost like an appointment diary page of your models, the times that they are booked in, along with the times allocated for each part of the service. Your sequencing will be individual to you, and we will support you to develop your sequence for your assessment. So the sequence does run like a usual diary appointment page would do on a busy working day. And this is one of the elements that the endpoint assessor will be looking at to show that you're working to a commercial standard. And you will be able to, in your sequence, time out specific aspects of your endpoint assessment. And this can really help you during that assessment as well. And we're here to support you to help create your sequencing ready for your assessment. So if you have any questions, you can speak to Gail Carrington, our General Training Manager, and also myself, Craig Anthony Kingston Bell, Executive Education Manager. Take time to flick back through this presentation using rewind and pause, play, and you can ask any questions, whether you want to contact us directly. You can always drop us a DM. To add a personal note to the end of this, the endpoint assessment is the perfect opportunity to showcase your skills and to finish your level 2 apprenticeship to the highest possible standard. The grading criteria is distinction, pass and fail. We always aim for distinction, and your endpoint assessor starts at distinction. So bear that in mind when you come onto that floor for that endpoint assessment. That is what we're all aiming for. You are aiming for, your models are aiming for, your endpoint assessor is aiming to award that distinction grade. So everything is set up in your favour. It really comes down to planning. It comes down to sequencing. It comes down to being resilient and being prepared. And also, of course, the actual techniques that you perform on the day. I do hope that you found the information in this presentation useful and informative. And if you have any more further questions relating to what you have read here today and also heard, we are here to help you at any time. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and any questions, give us a shout. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.